What about seed oils? This is such an interesting topic to me. People are doing great work. Interviewed Kate Shanahan, Tucker Goodrich, Saladino's on a roll these days with the seed oil stuff. But then I find there's a little bit of like, wait a second here, because there's like the Loma Linda people. There's people, these vegetarians that are doing okay. The people who are actually healthy, who are eating these seed oils, are eating a lot of plant foods and doing okay and living kind of long. Like, do you think that kind of disproves this notion that these are the devil, or is it just when in excess? So this is my thought, is that some of these people who manage to be really healthy and do all the good lifestyle factors well, like the Loma Linda people, for example, but they're not overeating. They're somehow maintaining this good body composition and eating higher PUFAs than we'd like, probably, and they're living along. So maybe is it just because most people can't do that? Most people are getting the high omega-6 ratio, and they're also overweight or eating too much or eating the other inflammatory foods. But just, what's your take in general on like how big a factor is it? Because I know I always just break it down into the three things. It's the sugar, it's the refined grains, and the seed oils. These are kind of well known as our enemies since Weston Price and John Yudkin and all these other people have kind of pointed these out. And I think that's very consistent, that these are our three things, and the combination of them are ruining our society. Maybe you could say your pecking order of those, or how do you think they play a role into each other?
I piss everybody off about this. I'll try to remember to answer this thing appropriately, but there is some interesting stuff. So like there was the Ansel Keys study that was basically lost to history, where they implemented a low saturated fat diet. And this is something that you could never do today. And it's part of the reason why this thing is so valuable. It was in thousands of hospitalized mental patients. And so these people were living effectively in a metabolic ward. We knew exactly what they ate and when they ate it. And one group ate kind of a standard American diet with saturated fat here. And this other group had saturated fat removed, and they added additional short chain omega-3 and omega-6, basically these things like corn oil and soybean oil and stuff like that. And these folks that had lower cholesterol levels and died at higher rates of cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality. So we have one of these things, like it's kind of a gold standard randomized controlled trial in a way. Like we're never going to be able to do something like that again. And so it's really interesting. But when you start getting in and looking at actually the traditional diets of existent hunter-gatherers and horticulturalists, people like the Kung San that got an enormous amount of their nutrition from the monongo nut, they have remarkably high intakes of short-chain omega-3 and omega-6s, but they're definitely not overeating all the time. Different tribes within the American West, like relying on pecans as an example. We just have historical examples of people obtaining significant amounts of polyunsaturated fats from whole food sources, and they do just fine. And when we're talking about modifying folks, their diet in a way that looks kind of more ancestral, they're not eating the breads, they're not eating the sugar, they're not eating these combinations of sugar and seed oil and whatnot, which at the end of the day, I think the biggest problem here is when people overeat, then the impacts of these pro-inflammatory foods are really remarkable. And I think another piece of this, which I have been meaning to get in and dig it up, it's funny how this stuff goes through evolution. So like over 10 years ago, folks were really in a tither about seed oils, about linoleic acid and whatnot. Matt Lalonde did a pretty good deep dive on it, and he made the case that so long as you have adequate EPA and DHA, it didn't really matter what else you did. And this was mainly an issue exposed. So two things there. Overeating creates more of a problem, but overeating creates a problem no matter what. Like that's just a known entity, but it maybe exacerbates the problems of these seed oils. But if you are deficient in EPA and DHA, then it allows that omega-6, that arachidonic acid pathway to take a disproportionate impact on the inflammasome and health consequences. So that's one thing. Like, I don't think it's as big a deal as like, I don't know that I would make a case not to eat chicken based off of sustainability thoughts, not the fact that it's eating grains and it may have higher PUFAs. Like, I personally don't really buy that. Another thing that absolutely chaps my ass is, so like Melissa Urban, Whole30, she just released this salad oil line, and it's from high oleic safflower. people lost their fucking minds over it. Like they just went crazy. Oh, you're so unethical. And I don't really care. I have no dog in the fight. I don't own a salad oil dressing company one way or the other. But when you look at the SAF oil within high oleic SAF oil, its omega-3 content, or the short chain PUFA content there, is about 4%. Within avocado, it's about 8 or 9%. Within olive oil, it can be as low as 3% or as high as 22%. And this is the thing that super chaps my ass. You have people, and I really called a bunch of people out on this because they're like, it's so unethical to do this. And I'm like, do you know the different relative ratios between high oleic safflower, regular safflower, avocado oil, and olive oil? Not a single person did. I'm like, you guys need to shut your fucking mouths until you're at least, like, if you have an opinion on this, but you don't even know what the composition is of this stuff, you're kind of being an idiot. And I tried not to be too big of a dick about it, but I really called some people out rather harshly on it and posted these resources. And they're like, oh shit, I didn't know that. So this is a little bit of my problem with, it's very easy to start creating a lot of bandwidth and you get a bunch of momentum, and it's hard these days to stand out from the crowd because there's so much noise and so many people competing for attention. And an easy way to get a notoriety is to just draw this really hard line in the sand and say, seed oils are the devil and they're the root cause of all problems. And they are clearly a problem under some circumstances, but that just kind of like monochromatic treatment of it, I don't know that it really does anybody any favors. And then people, it's like, even if you're eating a salad, like, are you putting half a bottle of this salad dressing on it? I don't know, man. It just started.
Like a tablespoon.
Yeah, it starts making me kind of crazy. It just feels like, one, people are not well educated on what the real numbers are in these stories. Like, what are the real numbers that we have? Is there a deeper story here with like EPA, DHA status that may be driving a bunch of this stuff? And not to say it doesn't matter, but the impact is much less if you're just ticking the boxes there. And then is it the same getting this from like whole food sources like nuts versus oppressed seed oil? And I got to say, it's a bummer because of my health stuff. Like, I don't really handle nuts the way that I used to. Like, they give me some GI problems. I have to be really sparing in my consumption of them. Yeah, I don't know if that fully